What's going on, everybody? It's your host, Dr. Splash. Today, I am announcing something big, right? I'm trying to grow my channel as ethically and as fast as possible, right? What's the best way to do that? Well, I'm well known for my research and how many comics I give people access to, whether it's hundreds or thousands, even 10,000s of scans, hundreds of your favorite characters scaled, not just in comics, but in fiction in general. Now, this is important because a lot of people pay for that access, but what I've decided is if you guys get me to 100,000 subscribers, if we get the channel to that size, I get that plaque, I am giving Yancey Street Gang full access to all my scaling moving forward. You guys will literally get everything. So make sure to tell all your friends to subscribe if you want access to all my comics, just everything I've done over the years, all the research, everything. Show some love and I will open it up at 100K. I think that's a great incentive. But moving back on topic, this is one of the greatest battles I think the power scaling community has ever produced when we're talking about themes. SCP-682 versus Doomsday is massive. It's not a battle I've ever covered before, only because I hadn't really ever gotten into SCP. I've covered it a few times, but it's definitely not a verse I would consider something that's regular on the channel. It's one that I've become a lot more educated on and well versed in while working with my buddy Dan, who also makes content. Go check him out. I recently did a really dope Halloween battle collab. Now, he's also going to come on the channel in the future. He's been on before, but he really helps me with my channel as well as a mod. So I've been looking into this battle and I decided, as one of the greatest thematic battles we've ever seen in the community, it's time I weigh in. So first, let's start with Doomsday. And to get this out of the way, we are using both at their peaks. So it's important to establish what that means for Doomsday. So initially, Doomsday right out the gate, might be a little controversial to people, but I had Doomsday early on already at Outerversal. And the reason I say this, it is blatantly made obvious that Doomsday, by far, was the hardest fight Superman had ever canonically had up to the 90s. This is over 50 years of experience with Superman. That includes fighting beings like Darkseid and beings beyond time, space, and even dimensions. So obviously, if Doomsday pushed him the hardest, even technically killed him for a while, and it's verbatim stated that was the hardest fight he had, if Supes had already fought outer beings before then and had outerversal feats, obviously this version of Doomsday would scale to that. Now, Doomsday is much more complex and nuanced than just a simple, he dies to something or gets hurt by it, eventually adapts, comes back stronger, right? Yes, that was done an infinite amount of times, but he's also been subjected to higher levels of destruction, right? And I mean that in the literal sense of he's been killed by entropy. He's been sent to the end of time, space, and creation itself. He's been killed by Superman. He's been killed by blunt force, energy, pretty much any way you can think of. He's been subjected to the pits of hell. In fact, he went through every layer of hell, getting killed and brought back until eventually he was adapting to the likes of hell casually, to the point that he was chewing on super Etrigans and a bunch of Etrigan tears like they were literal chew toys. For reference, Etrigan, one of the named demons, someone that can rip the face off Spectre, the literal wrath of God, who can slam outerversal realms like it's literal nothing, realms of pure imagination. So outer to high outer, right? Just chewing them like chew toys. To the point that Supergirl, Martian Manhunter went there, talked to First of the Fallen, and he's like, look, you got to put on a suit that's designed to fight the presence, to take something like this on. So Supergirl puts it on, they brawl, they can't really beat him, so they have to seal him, right? They use the Souls of Hell to seal Doomsday. However, Doomsday adapts to that, eventually gets out, right? Breaks the seal that should technically only be broken if you're going to fight someone like the Presence, which is absurd. Now, Doomsday gets out, and this King of Hell Doomsday is so ridiculously scary, so OP, that again, they expound on the narrative, right? Krypton never had a heaven, it never had a hell, but it did have a devil. That conceptually being Doomsday, right? Like Doomsday, even if you don't have religion, you have a Doomsday. That's what he is, just the inevitable end, the inevitable thing you can't overcome, right? That's kind of what he is. That's why he's so scary to even something like a Superman. So King of Hell and Doomsday comes back, gets beat up by Superman, gets stronger, adapts to that, gets beat up again. And then we see that's not the strongest version of King of Hell Doomsday, right? Because creation gets frozen and out pops Time Trapper Doomsday. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say Time Trapper should just be above this King of Hell Doomsday because of the way Superman was working him, right? And Time Trapper explains, look, I'm pretty much the highest version of Doomsday, right? Like, I've gone through all these events to the point that I'm the Time Trapper itself, essentially a being that oversees hypertime, which isn't just, a lot of people try to say it's just time. It's not just time. It's time, space, dimensions, stories, narratives, all these things, right? They oversee all that. One of the highest points you could be as a cosmic being in the DC creation, right? He's Time Trapper, and he tells Superman, look, this is technically the highest I can get as someone at like the end of creation, but I want to go beyond Presence's plan. Theoretically, I believe if you reached your peak and took me out, I would achieve a true death that would allow me to usurp my original place in DC, my original place in the Presence plan, my original narrative function. I could even usurp that and possibly go beyond God, right? It'd be even stronger than that. Now, obviously, we have not seen that version of Doomsday. We have not seen the Doomsday above Time Trapper, the theoretical surpassing the plan of Presence, right? We haven't seen that. If we ever do, holy shit. I don't think we will, but that would be crazy, right? But overall, Doomsday, his adaptive ability, it's up to the point that obviously it's gone through time, space, dimensions, basically any form of physical, conceptual damage, anything hell could possibly provide, up to its strongest layers, which even the lowest layer is outer to high outer. On top of this, can withstand all-out Superman, just simply come back from that, can exist as the Time Trapper. He's absolutely broken, one of the strongest characters in fiction with one of the most bullshit, reactive, adaptive abilities. But is it enough to go against the likes of SCP-682? Let's review the information at hand. So SCP-682, kind of like Doomsday, can't just be summarized to his first appearance or his lowest appearances, right? In fact, just like Doomsday, he has a much higher conceptual meaning. So let's get into all of this, right? Inverse scientists have determined that SCP-682 is but a projection of a higher entity from a different reality, and our reality struggles to comprehend it. The physical SCP-682 we know is just an inconsequential growth or shell of a higher incorporeal entity, which is the source of its resilience. Now, the reason I bring this up is because a lot of people will look at some of the damage SCP-682 has taken over the years and like adapted to, and they're like, oh, it doesn't take much to hurt it at that point. Well, this is basically a fucking troll. This is like a troll form sent down from true 682 just to fuck around in the verse, right? It's able to attack unhindered after being erased from existence by SCP-3930. Now, literally, you're going to see not only does it withstand physical damage, adapt to that, but the narrative in the cosmic bullshit it goes throughout time is absolutely absurd, and we're going to do some explaining about how strong the things it scales to, right? In a written narrative created by the Foundation that details the termination of a fictional version of SCP-682. So what does that mean? Essentially, you can take narratives in the SCP-verse, things that are beyond time, space, concepts, dimensions, infinite realities, all these things. These are like the tropes you would think of within fiction, like the hero's journey, all these things. You can subject things to narratives and even infinitely higher narratives, okay? So you can also do that to conceptually take something out. So they tried to create a narrative, the Foundation itself, to get rid of 682, basically put it in a narrative, put it in a story cycle to take it out, a hyper narrative. It proceeded to destroy, in this narrative, they can't even fucking control it in the one they made, to destroy 95% of all SCPs and stalemated SCP-3812. It is further theorized by the Foundation that the same would happen if SCP-001, or Andrew Swan's proposal, were to replicate the termination on their narrative. It was able to destroy 77% of the Omniverse, which contains infinite spatial dimensions, planes of existence and non-existence, infinite planes of transcendentant reality which are conceptually beyond the aforementioned realms. Now, I know what it sounds like. That's total power scaling bullshit, right? Like, it sounds like a power scaler wrote it. That's exactly what happened. That's what SCP is. If you haven't been around on my channel for a long time, I actually was very anti-SCP content at first because I was like, this is just fans making up power scaling stuff. But in the end, you deal with it. You're a content creator. It's super popular, and some of this shit does end up interesting, okay? It has its own personal timeline and history, completely erased by SCP-6871 before somehow regenerating a few seconds later, calling that shit trash, right? You can't even erase its personal narrative and timeline. It will simply just reappear. This also means that even if you destroy the physical body, right, which is just a conceptual projection, it will literally respawn and regenerate from another individual's memory. So if anything's encountered it, anything at all has seen it, it's coming back. There's just nothing you can do about it. It resisted SCP-5871's erasure from time and then copied 5871's time abilities and erased it from its timeline. So in an engagement on a temporal and a hyper-temporal and narrative level, it literally took someone's power on that level, flipped it on them and said, you suck at this shit, and took them out. Now, 682, we've been talking about its true form. We would refer to this as like 6820 in the stories of 682A. So the true source of SCP-682 immortality, and the reason it's really so hard to kill, is because it comes from the memeplex, right? SCP-6820A is the Foundation's designation for the memeplex. In essence, a hyperdense thought or concept behind 682. This concept is massive and contains hyper-narrative concepts such as adaptiveness, hatred, and a theoretical process for large-scale localized entropy inversion. As a result, it partially overlaps with the noosphere, or the higher dimensional collective thought space of humanity. This results in an embodiment of the concept manifesting in reality, in the form of the lizard we commonly see. 682 is a result of the concept's overlap with the noosphere. 682 changes over time, corresponding to the growth in humanity's conception in idealic space. 6820A is described by the Foundation as the difference between life and death, and anti-noospheric concepts like it are even conceptually beyond what we would consider the concept of life and death itself. All this makes the physical embodiment we know as 682 effectively unkillable. Now, SCP-6820 is a machine built by the Foundation to essentially eject 682's true form, or A, from the noosphere. However, as its computing capacity exceeds that of the human brain within the SCP-verse, it needed to be stored partially outside of the noosphere, resulting in it being partially corrupted by this same sphere. While its goal of removing 6820A from the noosphere backfired, it meant nobody could now remember what was corrupting the machine. Like, it literally took over this process in this massive high outer to boundless conceptual range, right? Even after the Foundation managed to remove the corruption with the use of SCP-055, this left 6820A entirely out of the noosphere, allowing it to find its perfect form with the aid of SCP-3125 and giving it the ability to create its own noosphere and doom its own universe of origin. So the infosphere at that point is the realm beyond the noosphere, with the noosphere easily being outer to high outer and transcended by the infosphere. 6820's true form resides in that infosphere and is fucking massive, like can almost take up that sphere. It's that big, right? And the cosmology contains spheres such as the physical or the observable reality, which we would consider composed of time, space, dimension, matter, energy. The next tier would be abstract, which would basically be like the hero's journey and other narrative ideas. Tier 2 would be the divine, which transcends that. And then after that would be the exophysical conceptualization of the concepts, right? The transcendence and the archetypal ideas behind even archetypes. It's an absurd theoretical level of scaling, right? That would be easily high outer to what we might consider boundless. And then you have the metaphysical after that. These entities exist above the any possible conceptualization you could try to do, right? You could go to that tier and say true form 682 scales to that, right? Which in my opinion means this. With how impressive Doomsday's scaling is, right? I think he can take most of the versions of SCP-682. However, when we put them at their peak versus peak, with 6820 versus the likes of Time Trapper, Doomsday, I think 6820 has achieved something Time Trapper hopes to achieve by escaping the plan, right? By escaping the conceptualization, all these things. The narratives, hyper narratives, everything beyond that. He's kind of achieved what Doomsday is trying to do. So in my opinion, it's hard to even argue. If Doomsday pulls off his plan, I still think SCP has stupid arguments for scaling. I think it's still possible 682A could win. However, I will fully acknowledge, I don't think Doomsday is getting it done. I don't think Time Trapper gets it done. I don't think King of Hell Doomsday gets it done. I think True Form 682 is too powerful, has too many layers of scaling, too conceptually high, just better at everything that Doomsday is trying to encapsulate, in my opinion. So with that in mind, I'm going to have to say SCP-682's True Form beats the strongest version of Doomsday. However, like I said, if Doomsday pulls off the plot and transcends Time Trapper, we'll revisit this. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Who do you think wins this matchup? I had a lot of fun doing this. Let me know what you think happens if this is to go down. If you agree or disagree, let me know. And remember, at 100K, everybody on Yancey Street gets to see all my research, all my comic scans, all my fiction scans, everything. So if you want access to all that you guys have been asking me for years, that I've been charging for because it's hard work, I feel like I've been rewarded if we hit 100K, so I would definitely reward you guys. So we got a new goal unlocked on Yancey Street. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your host, Dr. Splash, and remember, it's Yancey Street, bitches.